I want to also introduce Pastor Hoye. Where is he? There he is. I think you've got a chance to meet him, and if you'll come on forward, Pastor, I'll pass this off to you. We're looking forward to what you have to say, and for those of you who don't remember or weren't in there, when we get done here, any assistance you could give us in putting the tables and chairs up, we would really appreciate it. It'd make it a lot easier for some of us who are coming around. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Walter Hoye.
Well, I do appreciate everyone that has taken the time to actually stay the whole day. My goodness. You've heard from some great speakers, many of which are my dearest friends. And so I do appreciate the fact that you have stayed to cheer for them. Let me tell you the 3 reasons why I am so excited about Personhood. There is so much I want to talk to you about, but time won't let us. So I want to make sure I tell you my story. But I would love to have another time where I can talk to you about the 4 reasons why African American pastors don't engage in the pro-life movement. I won't talk to you about that tonight. That's a question many people have. But I'll have to come back and talk to you about that. Right now, I want to talk to you about the 3 reasons why I'm excited about personhood. Number 1, personhood is what the pro-life movement looks like victorious. That's what it looks like victorious. When it's all said and done, when God has given us the victory, when pro-life literally is the law of the land, it will look like personhood. It won't look like parental notification. That's good. I'm glad that parents are involved. They ought to be involved. The Bible's very clear about that. But that's not what victory will look like. It won't look like fetal pain legislation. That's good. The child does feel pain. It is just terrible. But that's not what victory looks like. It won't look like ultrasound pictures. That's true if they see the picture of the child, but 90% just refuse to do it. That is great, but that's not what victory looks like. It's not going to look like full disclosure legislation where the woman, the mother, has to know everything about an abortion. And that's true. Abortion is anything but a routine procedure. It is extremely harmful to the child and the mother. In terms, it's fatal to the child and oftentimes fatal to the mother. That's not what victory looks like. Jesus says that victory looks like him when he conquers death, hell, and the grave. That's what victory looks like. Yeah. And in my mind, personhood represents what victory looks like for the pro-life movement. Because when it's all done, everybody from the womb to the tomb will be a person. So personhood is unique of all the pro-life strategies out there because it represents what victory looks like for the pro-life movement. Let me tell you number two. Number two has to do with something more personal for me. My son, who is alive and well today, my wife is looking at me, she'll make sure I mention that. My son is alive and well today. Was born in 1984. And in 1984, my son was alive, but my son wasn't well. My son was born a little less than 6 months, and he weighed in at 2.1 pounds. 2.1. They called me into the doctor's office and they said, Mr. Hoye, you got a problem. Your son is just not going to survive this. In 1984, he had a couple of problems. One was the blood supply. The blood supply at the hospital could not guarantee me that their blood supply was not HIV/AIDS tainted. Well, I said, doctor, that's not a problem. My father and I, we can solve that problem. We knew where our blood was in. We knew our blood wasn't HIV/AIDS tainted, and we became my son's blood bank. We guaranteed that there would be blood, good blood for my son. Well, the doctor said, okay, Walter, you solved that problem, but let me tell you, you can't solve the next one. Medical science has done all that she can. We don't have anything more we can do for the child. And I said, you know what, Doc? I just refuse to accept that. I appreciate it. And it's true, you may have done all you could, but I know a greater physician than you. And this great physician, he can raise my son up. I said, I tell you what, you let me go home and I'll pray about it. And if Jesus tells me that he's taking my son home with him, I'll be all right with that. But you can't tell me that. I refuse to accept that. So that night I went home and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And you know what? Have you ever prayed and not got a word from God? Anybody ever done that? Anybody ever prayed and God didn't say a word to you? I hear you, Flip. I didn't get one. I didn't get one. But you know what? I got up the next morning. I'm weak and I'm tired because my dad and I had given so much blood that we no longer can give blood. It's painful for me to give it because my veins collapsed giving so much blood from my son years ago. Well, let me tell you, I made my way back into the hospital and I'm holding my son in the palm of my hand for what may be in my mind the last time I see my son. Last time. At this point, my son is now 1 pound 9 ounces, and every ounce is life at this point. I'm in a pre-meat ward, and there are parents all over, and there are parents there 1 minute, and there are parents gone the next minute. And when a parent is gone, you know the life of that child is gone. That baby's died. And so we're all holding each other's hand, and so they all decide to give me just a few moments alone with my son. And for the first time, I'm not just looking at my son. I'm holding my son in the palm of my hand, and I'm beholding my son. Now, I'm looking at something beside the needles and all the tape and apparatuses around my son. I'm actually looking at my son. I see his eyes and his nose. I see his mouth. I see his legs. I see his toes. I see his fingers. I'm actually beholding my son. And at that moment, God spoke to me and said, Walt, this is what a baby looks like on the inside of a room. You know, I'll never carry one in my room, but I held one in my hand. I never felt like I looked at my son trying to live. I looked at my son and realized this is a living, breathing human being. And at that moment, it became very clear to me what abortion is and what abortion does. You can't convince me that it's just a clump of tissue. I held my son in my hand. You can't convince me that this isn't a human life. I held my son, who should have been in the womb for another 3 months plus. I knew he was a human being, and I knew my son was a person. Personhood understands that. Personhood understands that there should be no exceptions to what I was holding in the palm of my hand. That it is just simply murder. In the Black Folk Life Movement, we just simply call it womb lynching. Womb lynching. Let me tell you the third reason. I won't hold you tonight. The third reason is even a little more personal than that. Between 1882 and 1968, the Ku Klux Klan lynched 3,446 Negroes. Yeah, 1968. According to the archives of the Tuskegee Institute, they were still lynching. They just stopped counting. Well, you know, my great-grandfather was one of those that was lynched. My great-grandfather built a house big enough to hold a family of 14, 12 kids and, 2 parents. The Ku Klux Klan rode in one night with their hoods and white robes on horses with guns and torches. They dragged my great-grandfather out and they lynched him. I won't, because we have children, I won't tell you what it is to them. But it ended up killing my grandmother as well. My great-grandmother. Well, there's 12 kids left in the house, and they have set the house on fire. And they're surrounded the house, and they're waiting for anybody to try to come out so they can just shoot them and just kill them. So the kids decide that they're going to stay inside the house as long as they can. As long as they can. Endure the inferno, the flames. Hoping that the clan will think that the flames are too high, the inferno is too hot, nobody can survive it right off, and they'll do the best they can. Well, you know what? That night, my great-grandfather was lynched. My great-grandmother was horribly abused. And I lost 6 of my family members that night. Annie was my grandmother's sister. She saved the remaining 5, the youngest of my family. On fire herself. She saved the rest of my family. Now, at the end, Annie ended up being buried in the ground because they couldn't take her to a hospital. They put her in the ground, and they put lard in the ground to help her skin stay on. And then they would change her every day. But there's no hospital for us to go to. There's no police we can call. There's no judge, there's no justice. There's nowhere we can go. Because you know what? The Klan hadn't really broke the law. At most, the Klan was guilty of one thing. You know what it was? No, they were just guilty of trespass. You see, black folk weren't considered persons. We're just considered property. You see, I know what it means not to be considered a person. I know what happens when you start deciding who's a person and who isn't. I know where it's going. When you start deciding, well, maybe at 3 months that's a person. Or personhood comes at some other time other than at the very beginning. When you start deciding who's a person and forget God, just leave God out of the equation, I know where that's going. And every African American knows that. When you get right down to it, we know. See, we've been there. We understand what it's like to be proper. I'm telling you, personhood understands that. Personhood resonates with me. Personhood understands that child inside that womb is not proper. That child inside the womb is made in the image of God. That child inside the womb is a person because God said so. Not because man said so. Personhood